My name is Radhika Garg. I'm an assistant professor at Syracuse University, and I'm going to talk about my paper titled Supporting the Design of Smart Speakers to Foster a Sense of Ownership in Asian Indian Families. At face value, smart speakers are often viewed as ours within a family. However, as soon as family members begin to use them, different claims of ownership can surface. For example, when household members' profiles are added to family account to provide access to a device, it becomes apparent that the device differentiates among adults, teenagers, and children whose boundaries of use are not the same. And when such different levels of access become visible, it can result in perceptions of asymmetric ownership, which can impact use, lead to tensions and conflicts amongst family members. In addition, one's culture and identity are known to influence one's perception and use of technology, including those of smart speakers. Therefore, in this paper, we asked what aspects of smart speakers support or hinder the fulfillment of psychological needs that foster a sense of ownership in Asian Indian parents and teenagers. Although a sense of ownership is traditionally a legal concept, ownership has also been defined as a psychological concept. In review of psychological ownership from multiple disciplines, including HCI, scholars found that perception of ownership, that is, when somebody feels an object is theirs, is based on the constructs of self-efficacy, self-identity or representation, territoriality, autonomy, accountability, and responsibility. And we use this framework to answer our research question. 20 Asian Indian parent-teen pairs who belong to low socioeconomic groups and currently lived in US participated in a 2-week experience sampling followed up with one-on-one semi-structured interviews. During the 2 weeks' time, we asked participants to log responses, questions such as what was the purpose of using smart speaker, when was the device used, if they felt constrained, and if they made any adjustments to accommodate other families' preference or needs. During the interviews, we asked them indirectly to elaborate on the perception of ownership and why it mattered. For example, in regard to autonomy, a construct of sense of ownership, we asked them if having control of smart speakers mattered, what having control of the device meant to them, and how much control they thought they had over the device and why. 3 of the researchers were involved in thematic analysis to understand the main themes in our data. The 3 researchers engaged in iterative coding. First, the initial codes were identified, such as synthetic voice of the assistants. And then affinity diagramming was done to understand if broader themes were visible. To identify broader themes, we went back to our initial framework of sense of ownership and saw if these initial codes could be mapped to the broader concepts and constructs from sense of ownership. We will now walk you through the broader concepts of sense of ownership and how our findings mapped to them. The findings show that the user's sense of self-efficacy or competence was reflected in their being able to communicate effectively with smart speakers. For example, the parent participants specifically mentioned that they felt less competent in using these devices because sometimes they don't support vernacular dialect or language they were most fluent in. For example, a participant noted that there was no support for Tamil on the device, and I do not know Hindi, so I have to first carefully craft the question in English to be able to use it, and then I have some Tamil name in my query, for example, while making a list, it will fail to understand that. Participants also mentioned how the need to repeat contextual information with every single command relating to a current task and environment hinders effective communication. For example, a teen noted, if I'm asking 10 things about a movie, it will expect me to repeat the name 10 times. This makes the conversation really ineffective. Smart speakers also fail to become a representation of at least some aspect of participants' self. Due to the stumbling blocks of synthetic voice of the assistants, the device's inability to associate content and commands with specific users, and their inability to offer a personal experience to users. More specifically, the first pattern visible in our findings was that adult participants noted that the synthesized voices of the assistants misrepresented their accents and language. Participants noticed the importance of being able to distinguish between a machine's voice and a human voice, but still found conversational agents to be exaggerating the peculiarities of their language and accent. For immigrants from India, material possessions provide a sense of identity. Ancestor photographs, saris, and jewelry serve as cues that call to mind a prior life and identity in India they want to preserve. Music and videos enable them to feel a sense of connection to the Mother India. As the parents and teenagers access content through smart speakers, some of them recalled the lost practice of displaying material possessions in their homes as a means of self-expression, showcasing their cultural identity and roots, and as a stimulus to conversation between family members and visitors. In this theme, participants discuss voice profiles as their territory, the need for communicative markers to avoid any conflicts, and the need to configure data territories. For example, a teenager participant noted, "Many a times my father and I want to use it at the same time. The other day he was listening to a recipe on it, and I came from my room and played music on it. It did not go well with him, as it messed up the recipe instructions somehow." As a consequence, some participants often left notes next to a speaker or intentionally communicated their plans or preferences to others in the family so that they would take heed before interacting the device. Specifically, in Asian Indian families, these communicative markers were particularly important because they enabled these families to foster family harmony while maintaining a hierarchy of control in the family. Both these aspects are known to be important beliefs in Asian Indian families. Participants discussed autonomy in reference to that parents being able to restrict how and when teenagers use the device, and their desire that parents and teenagers should be able to control smart speakers' capabilities and responses. In reference to the latter, a teenager participant noted, "The way volume can be set all of a sudden changed. There was a repeat after me action that it no longer supports. It's strange that all of these things happened without me having the choice to pick and choose." In this theme, participants noted their voluntary or enforced obligations in regards to smart speakers. For example, a parent participant noted, "If anything, it's annoying and burdening to have to manage 4 different profiles and ensure there is a guest profile when somebody visits us for a longer period of time. There are some things that are only possible with the owner's account, which makes it so irritating that each time some changes are to be made, it only adds on to my work." Overall, we realize that there is a gap between the current design of smart speakers and how they satisfy the psychological needs, especially pertaining to the sense of ownership. Therefore, to bridge this gap, we constructed design guidelines, following the approach such as they were written as a rule of action, starting with the verb, accompanied by one sentence description that qualifies or clarifies any potential ambiguities. We also note that design guidelines can satisfy more than one psychological need. Therefore, we list each guideline in relation to the dominant need we think its application will satisfy. First design guideline was pertaining to self-efficacy. Maintain conversational context across different interactions with the user to help the user effectively communicate with the device. In Design Guideline 2, we ask the designers to provide users with options to associate content and commands with a specific user so that the choices of the user can be made visible as a badge of identity. Our third design guideline pertains to territoriality and autonomy. We ask designers to enable users to employ territorial markers, which will help them avoid activity and preference-related conflicts by either communicating their preferences or staking a claim to the device or data. The fourth one talks about enabling parents to set context and activity-based restrictions that control children's use of device. The fifth one asks designers to provide users with opportunities to control updates to existing functionalities and responses to commands. And finally, the sixth one asks designers to enable users to share ownership with others to help them distribute their administrative workload. We discuss each of these guidelines in detail in our paper. Thank you.